Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 103. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. I'm glad you guys are back with us for this Tuesday edition of the show. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy, what is today? Happy Tuesday. I guess it really is a Tomlin Tuesday on this Tuesday, correct?
It is, and we have some very exciting Mike Tomlin news. The Steelers announced on Tuesday morning they have signed Mike Tomlin to a 3-year extension. Let me go ahead and read the quote here from team president Art Rooney II. He says, quote, "I am pleased to announce we have extended Mike Tomlin's contract through the 2024 season. Mike is one of the most successful coaches in the National Football League, and we are confident in his leadership to continue to lead our team as we work to win another championship."
Well, are you a bit surprised at the timing or the length of this?
I guess a little bit on the timing. I'm not sure. In past years, when have they done the Tomlin extension? I'm not sure what the timetable for those have been.
Yeah, I'll have to look back on that as well, too. Normally, I think it seemed like they're a little bit later in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. They're like a summer kind of thing, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not 100% sure. The length of it, I mean, yeah, obviously you're not surprised. Rooney stood by Tomlin after the season, so you knew there wasn't really any indication they were souring on Mike Tomlin as a Steelers coach. Still, contracts are worth the paper they're printed on. Not that I'm expecting Tomlin to be fired anytime soon, but it doesn't mean a whole lot to me necessarily. And then obviously this starts the debate of how good of a coach Tomlin is. Obviously, I like Mike Tomlin. I think he's been a really good coach overall. But at the same time, I think it's very fair to say and to point out, 3 playoff wins over the last decade is not the Steelers standard.
Let's see. I'm looking back at the Steelers Depot archives. July 23rd, 2015. Steelers signed Mike Tomlin to a 2-year contract extension. Looking at another headline here, August 4th, 2017. Mike Tomlin, Steelers agreed a contract extension through 2020. Looking back, another one from July 2019. Steelers signed Mike Tomlin to a 1-year contract extension. So this is this early in the offseason like this. I mean, I think that's considerable news. I certainly didn't wake up thinking, I wonder if today is the day that the Steelers signed Mike Tomlin to a contract extension. And look, I mean, 3 years, I didn't see that coming either. I don't know if maybe that's something maybe Mike Tomlin demanded. I don't know. But, the big pushback, I think, overall here that, above and beyond the normal, people wanting Mike Tomlin gone at all costs, there's always going to be those people, is the fact that he's getting a 3-year contract extension on the heels of really what, was essentially a debacle. Not necessarily, I mean, he's the head coach. It all comes back to him, right, for what happened in Cleveland. But, I mean, there were certainly things that he did not cause that caused that thing to go off the rails right quick against Cleveland last year. Had they beaten the Browns in the playoffs, what would that have even meant? How would that team have gone farther? We of course will never know. But I think the biggest pushback that you'll see right now as part of all this is, man, this is a Steelers team under Tomlin's direction that just hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs for multiple years now.
Yeah, for a decade, like I said, 3 playoff wins in 10 years, and that is not the Steelers standard, no matter how you want to slice it. Obviously, we know, the no losing seasons things is incredibly impressive and rare. But I remember one of my first terrible takes was, the Steelers standard is not to go 8-8 or 9-7. It's to go to the playoffs, to win playoff games, and to hoist Lombardis. And the Steelers have not done that in the last 10 years. So the pressure, I think, is certainly going to be on Mike Tomlin on the back of this contract extension of, being more successful in the postseason, where they've just lacked for too long now.
Right. I mean, and with the process, what are the prospects right now of 2021? I mean, I appreciate Tomlin's sentiment there as part of the press release today, talking about looking forward and always driven to. Do you have that quote in front of you exactly there? Read that off.
Yeah, it's a quote, "I am extremely grateful for this contract extension and want to thank Art Rooney II and everyone in the organization for the support in my first 14 seasons. We have a goal of winning the organization's 7th Super Bowl championship, and I couldn't be more enthusiastic about this upcoming season." Very typical Tomlin head coach statement there.
Right, exactly, and you wouldn't expect anything other than that. But when you look at, not that you can read too much into over and unders, because it's just perception of what the bettors and where they can get the money to fall on both sides of the fence, essentially. But the Steelers, early projected over under win total for 2021 is 9. And we talked about that, I think, on the last show there. There are going to be a lot of upset people, I'm sure, and Art Rooney II included, if this team only wins 9 games in 2021. And more importantly, if this team, wins less than that and doesn't make the playoffs, or wins 9 games, makes the playoffs, and gets bounced out of the first round.
Or wins 12 games and gets bounced in the playoffs. I mean, they're good in the regular season. They're contenders. They're winning the North. I mean, or close to it. That's fine. But all that matters is postseason success. That's what defines you in Pittsburgh. It's not how well you play in the regular season. It's how well you play in January, hopefully in February. And that's where this team has struggled for too long now.
So look, I mean, you would think that that Tomlin's tenure now, at least, the plan is that it's going to go past Ben Roethlisberger's time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
right.
Ben Roethlisberger's still playing. There have been, I think, an article or two written in some major media, sports disc jockey conversation about will Ben play past the 2021 season? We've talked about it. I think it's plausible. I think it's doubtful. I would be in the camp of I'll believe it when I see it, but I wouldn't run out and bet my house that 2021 is Ben Roethlisberger's last season. But for all practical purposes, it certainly does seem that Tomlin's going to go on past the Ben Roethlisberger era.
And maybe that's the reason why this was 3 years, is to kind of really just subtly say that, Tomlin is going to be with us post Ben, assuming Ben's not playing 3 years from now. So there isn't this, Ben's contract and Colbert's contract and Tomlin's contract all kind of expire around the same time. I think they certainly want Tomlin to be that bridge and be the guy to lead the new era of the post Big Ben era. I think this contract extension reflects that. All right, so that is the news on Mike Tomlin. Also some news on Vince Williams, and this is not a surprise. I know you basically called this from the moment that he re-signed, but Vince Williams' contract terms were made known today, and it is for the minimum.
Absolutely. Then I think the most surprising aspect maybe of this all, look, the way all this do-si-do went down and his contract being terminated earlier in the offseason and then circling back the way he did, you didn't have to be a rocket surgeon or a heart scientist, I don't think, to figure out that maybe this thing was going to be come in at or right around the NFL minimum. Well, it is that, and I had a feeling it was going to be a benefit contract, but it might not seem like much, Alex, but I think when you dive deeper into this, it kind of gives a little bit of credence to what I talked about there right after they signed him on the podcast. And what I'm talking about here is they could have given Vince Williams up to a signing bonus up to the amount of $137,500. And by going that high and that high only, the rest of his contract would have, salary cap wise, you wouldn't have taken the full brunt of the total value amount, which would have been $1.075 million plus the $137,500. So you could have given him that signing bonus, used up 137,500 more of cap space in the process, as opposed to the 70,000 that they used in re-signing them, and it would have looked a little bit more like, okay, it looked. I'm sorry, 80,000 more in salary cap space, not 70,000 more, but it would have made it look a little bit more like Vince Williams was most definitely into plans for the 2021 season. Mm-hmm. Once again, we're only talking about $137,500 here, but you didn't give it to him. You could have given it to him. The meaning of this means now that if you have to cut Vince Williams prior to the start of the 2021 season, is that there's not going to be any more additional dead money charge on top of him. Look, you already have a huge dead money charge on Vince Williams this year of a little over $3 million after terminating his contract earlier in the year. I guess what I'm getting at here is, I still don't think Vince Williams is a lock for this 2021 roster. Gasp. Mm-hmm. Insert gasp sound effect here.
We'll get that in editing. Yeah, that's fair. I don't think he's locked in, and certainly the contract reflects that. Especially, I think that signing bonus just in principle means something. I don't know exactly how much it means. I think he'll be given the opportunity to start and battle Spillane, and we'll see what happens in the draft. But you're right. I don't want to say it's 100% chance that Vince Williams is going to make this team. I think that would be a wrong assessment.
Has your mind changed any bit in this since seeing the contract and since we first talked about Vince re-signing?
I mean, not really. The signing bonus or the lack thereof is a little curious, but we knew the contract was going to be for the minimum. It was going to be, a light contract overall. So it doesn't change it too much. I still think, considering he had other offers, I think maybe there was some conversation about what his role would be or could be and what opportunity he would have. And if I felt like Pittsburgh really was just kind of throwing a dart, I don't know if he would have circled back, but it's hard to get a read into it. But I know Vince brings a lot of value in terms of the leadership, the communication, a really strong run defender, and that can be important. So it's still tough for me to imagine him being cut, but I won't say there's no chance that he could be cut by the team.
Now, obviously, this whole conversation will once again turn into Dave hates Vince Williams, thinks it's the worst re-signing of the offseason. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. I hated the fact that I was right that with Vince it was going to either be cut him or him take a pay cut down to the minimum there. It ended up being right twice, haters. But the fact of the matter is, it was just one of those necessary evils that you saw forthcoming. I think Vince, if healthy enough and the athletic ability, still has something to potentially offer this team. That said, the way all this has transpired, I don't think you can run right out and bet the house that he's going to be part of this. And once again, I'll circle back. I think Robert Spillane is more of a lock to make this 53-man roster than Vince Williams is, and that's primarily because at worst case scenario, you have Robert Spillane probably going to be a core special team player for you. Spillane also moves a little bit better, not north and south. Vince Williams still, even as early as last year, with the tackles for loss and the way he's blowing up the run, he still can play north-south downhill as good as probably most any inside linebacker in the league. It's just everything outside of that you worry about. I don't think you're going to get much more any really special teams value out of him at this point moving forward here. So I think the contract, even though once again we're talking about only $137,500 difference here. I really think that's quite significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Spillane is much more of a roster lock than Vince Williams is at this point, but I still think both are more likely to make the team than not. So we'll see on that.
When you roll this all the way back through your head now, mm-hmm. Does it certainly seem like they probably went to Vince and said, look, you're going to have to take a cut down to the minimum if you want to stay. If you want to do that, we can work with you. But if not, we're going to cut you. And Vince said, no, I'm good. I'll take my chances. And then, I want to come back.
Yeah, it might have. I don't know exactly how it played out. Obviously, we knew they couldn't keep him at his current salary, just given the state of things, contractually, salary cap wise, and all that. So maybe they did do the pay cut, maybe not. I'm not quite sure, but obviously, he circled back. All right, Dave. I do want to talk about some more Steelers news here, but I'd be remiss if we did not discuss what happened last night. We had our draft depot roundtable with a good chunk of the Steelers depot crew. It was just a 2-hour podcast. It kind of flew by just like that, Dave. Just a ton of good discussion. We have it up on Steelers Depot and wherever you listen to Terrible Podcast. So we encourage you guys to check that out. I thought the whole group just did a fantastic job breaking down the draft from basically every angle possible.
Yeah, read off the names of the people, Scott. I want to make it because it was so fantastic that I want to make sure we get a lot of credit out to the guys, starting with you, Alex, because I really thought you did a great job of really moderating that and moving it along. If it was up to me, it would have been 4 hours long.
That's why you weren't the moderator.
That's probably why I wasn't the moderator, because
we 4 hours of Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah. No, I mean, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't all Pat Freiermuth, but I wanted to make sure because we had all had kind of that conversation about it. But tell the people who was involved with that last night.
Yeah, I wanted to pull up the names here so I didn't miss anybody. We had Josh and Jonathan and Tom and Owen and Tyler and Daniel, who's new to the Steelers Depot crew, and Scott Pavel, who does not have Twitter, but we thanked his contributions just the same. So, yeah, all those guys were on. I know Daniel kind of jumped on and off a little bit. Scott showed up a little bit late, but just having those guys on and getting to pick their brains, and because a lot of those guys did the profiles this year. We have well over 200 profiles, and the majority of them have been written by the names I just mentioned. And so to get their specific insight on the guys that they personally scouted, I think was really valuable. And it was good to hear somebody not us talk about some of these guys as well.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, Coach Wilf, who's contributed throughout this process, he's overseas. And a little bit time difference there, and his I think his real time job, kind of prevented him from being on. Obviously, we had an open invitation to him, as we did Teven Jenkins, who earlier in the offseason wrote quite a few profiles. He couldn't attend, nor could Wes. So we could have had that panel be even, I think, 3 more, and I can only imagine I would have definitely pushed for it to be 4 hours at that point. Boy, I don't know about you, Alex, but I had kind of a surreal moment during, a couple times during that thing, thinking, man, how blessed am I? Because for those of you who have listened to that 2-hour podcast, I mean, I don't see how you couldn't have gotten your doors blown off by it, and hopefully you did. But imagine being in my seat and thinking back to first creating this podcast, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago. And obviously the site just turned 13 back in April as well, too. Just really a surreal moment of kind of what this thing has materialized into. And I listened back through it last night, and I would stack it up really to any pre-draft show out there. I mean, the information was just that good, and I learned a lot just from last night's show alone.
I did as well, so be sure to check that out. Again, it is wherever you listen to this terrible podcast, also on SteelersDepot.com. And similar to that, I do want to thank everybody who showed up this weekend for my Walk the Mock Steelers draft. We had a record crew over on YouTube, and just a lot of fun there with you guys hanging out with me. And I know, Dave, you were able to get there a little bit later as well and kind of draft this thing. And I know it wasn't a perfect draft, and it wasn't ideal maybe, but I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I realized, whoever was managing that, what was it, the Broncos team or whatnot?
Yeah, there was some creative liberties taken with the Broncos draft.
Yeah, kind of throwing that off, and that's the bad thing about these things. It's kind of similar to when you do fantasy football mock drafts or free leagues or something like that. You think, oh man, one pick, and I understand, but I think more than anything was the conversation and to hear the. To get the feedback from those that were watching it, and obviously your excitement during it, I think was fun to watch happen, and kind of being on the clock, and I think all the way around that was a good segment, and we'll see if maybe you're able to do one more here, before the actual draft takes place, and maybe there'll be a no trade stip because you obviously did trade out of the second round as part of that. Maybe the next one they do, maybe no trades, and maybe you can get all the owners to not do something crazy or something. But right. I thought it was great to experience it, and I hope everybody listened to that as well.
Yeah, it was intense being on the clock, but a lot of fun. Yeah, the good news was there was 31 other human owners running teams. The bad news was there was 31 human owners running teams, right. And sometimes people have a little too much fun with that, but a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do something else. All right, Dave. Back to some Steelers news here. This news became official, although we kind of really strongly suspected it and discussed it during Friday's show. Later on Friday, the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of many teams to announce that they were not planning on showing up to voluntary workouts this offseason, citing health and safety concerns due to the COVID pandemic. Although, as Jerry Dulac from the Post-Gazette wrote yesterday, since yesterday was day one of the first phase of offseason activities, at least a dozen players showed up for strength and conditioning training.
Yeah, not surprising. We knew that was coming, and it really, my comment about this dog and pony show that it seems like it's two to three teams a day, right? And I don't think this is by accident, right? I think this is sort of we want to stay in the headlines. Every day there's going to be two or three teams saying that we're not going to participate, and I mean, this is obvious. I think this is a very orchestrated movement. You can get into the minutiae of this and say these guys are under contract. This is now that COVID's starting to subside and all like that. That they should be honoring that. But I mean, once again, what are we talking about them honoring here? These are voluntary. They're OTAs stand for organized team activities, and these things are also voluntary in nature. And while the early phase of the off-season program is just strength and conditioning and coming in and lifting the weights under supervision, I would imagine that you're still, and I would think that the team would say, look, you don't have to do, if you want to come in here and just watch everybody, that's fine too. But at least come in here where we can get you on some sort of organized, supervised, with the appropriate machines and stuff like that, so you keep yourself in shape and you don't hurt yourself, right? I mean, and I think you're starting to see that. If the players are trying to make a statement that we're not even going to go into the building to lift and all like that, I think that's where they're making a mistake. Now, if you want to boil this thing down to, well, look, these organized team activities, the actual on the field stuff, we don't need. We don't want to run the risk of tearing up a knee or what have you. Okay, I get it, but to me, it is in a. Tell me if I'm wrong here. I mean, I would think that it's in a player's best interest in the first phase of these OTA sessions to go into the facility under the supervision of your strength and conditioning coach or whatnot, and doing things that way. I would think that's the best case scenario.
Well, I think the player's argument is that we don't want to be in groups of people just to run the risk of COVID. And
sure, and I get that. You can plan that out, right? I mean, properly.
But I think their argument is let's all stay at home and do our own thing. And I'm sure a lot of these guys, especially the stars, have gyms at their house, and so they'd say, I'll just work out at home, where there's really significantly less risk as opposed to traveling and being in a weight room with other people.
What about the guy just signed off the street by the Steelers a couple weeks ago?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I think that's what the issue is, and it's going to be really impossible to get all players to do this. And obviously, a dozen so far have gone to the Steelers facility. We don't know who that dozen is, but you can probably imagine it's guys really back end of the 90s trying to fight for a job because they need those reps. They need an opportunity. They want to get in front of coaches and kind of get their name out there more in the coach's head. So I think you're going to see that throughout the offseason, especially rookies coming in, undrafted guys, etc. So I think it's going to be difficult for the Steelers and all teams that have made this declaration to be united in that sense, because some players are going to show up and work out because they need these reps.
Do you think, it's going to happen, but, you think there's going to be some dissension in there between the older guys and the younger guys? Man, you guys, I don't want to relate it to kind of the the crossing the line, back in
that sounds,
the scabs and all that happened back in the 80s there, crossing the line. Yeah, I don't think it's anywhere close to that, but I mean there can't help but be some of that, maybe not necessarily in the Steelers locker room, but across the league, you rookies get out of here, or you kids ruin it for all of us, and you see what I'm getting at there. I mean, even your experienced guys that have the Watts, they have this $1 million facility. It looks like that those guys all train at, and they probably have the best of the best trainers kind of overseeing them as well too. They can afford that stuff, but I mean, what percentage of the league actually is that can afford that kind of stuff, and how much what's the other percentage of the guys that got to run down to the Planet Fitness and kind of go that way? That's the part of it I think that gets me the most, is kind of that first phase there, this early portion where it's all kind of strength and conditioning, or where it is all strength and conditioning. Nobody's saying they got to go in. If you don't feel well, don't go in that day. And also, I think it is on the team to say, okay, it's open 7 days a week. We're only going to admit, I don't know, however many you can admit to have the proper social distancing based on square footage, yada yada. We'll have people there constantly sanitizing stuff. That kind of stuff can be done. I'm sure teams would be willing to do that.
I think they have to do that,
or have to do that as well there. So that's the portion where I think the players are missing the boat here. I totally get the rest of the not wanting to be on the field for the however many organized practices that are volunteer from there.
Mm-hmm. But even when OTAs do occur, again, the idea for the Steelers and for the league is going to be, in theory at least, we're a united front. None of us are going to show up, but you're still going to have 30 to 50 guys show up, because they're going to be rookies, they're going to be undrafted players, they're going to be first-year players trying to, just get every rep possible to try to, make the team here later this summer. And I think, it's going to be just a mixed message when the statement is we're not showing up, and when inevitably 30 to 50 players show up for OTAs and minicamp.
And then you're going to have your groups of them that get together, on the side anyway. Ben Roethlisberger take the boys down to the park, and I mean that kind of stuff's inevitably going to happen, right?
Yeah, and I've already seen some clips of guys training, which is fine. I mean, but again, it muddies that message a bit. I understand that point there.
What's the best case scenario here?
I mean, again, in the player's mind.
I mean, you're not going to collectively bargain this anytime soon. That it be mandatory or they get paid more for it. I don't guess.
Yeah, and again, in theory, is that no one shows up, or as few players as possible show up for these off-season workouts, and that sends the message. But will that happen as a united front for Pittsburgh and across the league? I think maybe half of them will do that, but half of them will show up because they feel like they have to.
All right, it's just interesting. I mean, this is just the NFLPA pushing where they can push, I guess. They didn't get, they did such a poor job once again, I feel, in the negotiations, which has been the case for at least the last 3 or 4, negotiations that I've covered and all like that. Just get the thing in writing next time, and either make these things mandatory or not. Are OTAs as we know it gone now forever, you think?
Yeah, if the NFLPA had its way, it'd be all virtual from now and post-COVID. I don't know if it'll actually be that way. I think the owners and coaches want to have some sort of in-person stuff. So I think there will still be some in-person stuff, at least mandatory minicamp, rookie minicamp, things like that. But it may look different, than it did pre-COVID.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting now, really, just to see what happens here with the rookie minicamps. Mm-hmm. Now, have you got
to be there?
They are going to be there.
Are you saying for this year? Or are you saying in the future rookie minicamps?
No, I'm talking this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think the rookies are going to show up. If you're a 7th round guy, I mean, you're showing up.
Okay. So the rookie minicamps are still going to take place, and you think there's going to be high attendance around the league because of that?
I do. Now, if you're Trevor Lawrence, maybe the decision is different. But if you're a 6th, 7th round guy trying to fight for reps, trying to pick up the playbook and learn all that stuff, I think they're going to be there.
Okay. It'd be interesting to see what happens. But after, assuming that some semblance of that happens around the league, there's not going to be too much more to report after that, I don't think.
Right. But they are going to still be there for mandatory minicamp? These are all they're all saying we're going to skip voluntary, but we're going to be there for the mandatory minicamp? Is that
That's the way I'm kind of taking it. Yeah. We'll see.
So, we'll see. All right, Dave, let's transition to the NFL draft and a really interesting report from Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network yesterday. I know that Pauline may not be the largest, household name when it comes to the draft, but somebody I've always liked, respected, and I think is pretty credible, although the Steelers have one of the, they don't really leak any information, so you don't know exactly where this is coming from. But Tony Pauline reported yesterday that the Steelers have narrowed down pick number 24 to 3 names. Those 3 names are Alabama running back Najee Harris, Alabama center Landon Dickerson, and Oklahoma State offensive tackle Teven Jenkins. So your thoughts on the report and those 3 names?
Well, I mean, the fact that Najee Harris is in there is gasp. I mean, who saw that one coming? Yeah. I mean, he's obviously been linked to the Steelers, go all the way back. I mean, almost immediately after the last season ended. I mean, you go back to the Senior Bowl and the Steelers, heavy heavy interest.
But that was Pauline reporting the interest at the Senior Bowl in Harris.
Yeah. Well, but once again, I mean, I think we've come to find out over the years, and you've been down there as well. Everybody talks to everybody down at the Senior Bowl. I mean, everybody meets with everybody. It's just how some things are presented on Twitter as reports make it sound a lot more important than others, right? I mean, but now, will you have a general manager maybe sit in on something as opposed to maybe just a position coach? I think that's relevant when obviously when that news happens. But fact of the matter is, we don't really know what happens behind closed doors. Unless you're actually there. But going back to Najee Harris, 1 + 1 + 1 has equaled 3 throughout the process when it comes to him. So it's not surprising that he was included in Tony Pauline's report there. Nor is it probably overly surprising with Landon Dickerson either. I mean, the Steelers need to improve their offensive line. They lost their veteran center, Marquise Pouncey, during the offseason. Dickerson, obviously coming out of University of Alabama. The Steelers were all over those pro days this year. Dickerson, depending on who you ask, depending on the medicals, the best center in the draft, according to several, would be quite the logical selection, assuming the medicals play out well with him. So I don't think I didn't clutch my pearls on that one there. And then the other one, Teven Jenkins, I get why he is in report, but I think just from the Blues Clues aspect of it, Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert, at least we still don't think we're at that Oklahoma State pro day. You have a guy in Jenkins that, let's face it, I think he started or played 7 games at left tackle during his college career. The rest of them at right tackle. Normally, and I use this loosely, you don't see pure right tackles go first round as opposed to truer left tackles. I'm not saying that he can't play left tackle. I just think initially in the NFL, Teven Jenkins is going to be a right tackle. several other little minor aspects, I think, adding on to Teven Jenkins would make him. I think it'd be quite a story if Jenkins winds up being the selection at 24 overall. Let me put it to you that way.
Okay. Yeah, I think just taking a step back for me when I saw this report was just looking at the three names, Harris, Jenkins, and Dickerson. That says one thing. One, granted, obvious thing, but the Steelers' mantra is we need to get more physical, we need to be tougher, we need to win the battle up front, and we need to do better in short yardage situations. And drafting any of Harris, Jenkins, or Dickerson accomplishes that. So that is a Steelers mindset. Again, not a big surprise considering how horrendous they were in those areas last season and even in 2019. But those three guys fit that bill, and that's why that's the common theme between all those guys. Now, to the players themselves, Harris, no surprise there. Dickerson, what this tells me is they're comfortable with Dickerson's medical. That's the one thing that's holding him back. If he had a clean bill of health, this is a slam dunk first-round pick, no questions asked. So the Steelers know his medical better than, of course, you or I ever will. That's the big concern with him, but they appear to be comfortable with that. And then with Jenkins, the thought would be, if he was to pick hypothetically, how does the offensive line look? Is he going to be right tackle? Is he going to be a left tackle? Does Banner move to left tackle? Like, if you draft Jenkins, your starting tackles are Banner and Teven Jenkins, correct?
I mean, you got a first-round draft pick. If he didn't start the season, he wouldn't be too many games away from it, you know?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, who starts where? Is it going to be Banner on the left side or Jenkins on the left side? And vice versa?
Personally, I would think, and it goes back once again, I think it's a little much because of his history at Oklahoma State to have Teven Jenkins come in as a rookie and be your starting left tackle.
Right, but the case against Banner is that he's played primarily right tackle and is always and he admitted he's even more comfortable at right tackle. Now he says he will play left tackle and he has some experience there, but he doesn't have a ton of experience there.
Right, but you asked me what, so I think that's another kind of strike against why maybe it wouldn't happen. Is that alone? You better have a lot of my view is if Teven Jenkins is your guy, and look, I know in today's NFL, you really shouldn't differentiate between left and right tackles because edge rushers move, yada yada. But if you're going to to me, I'm old school. If you're going to spend a first-round draft pick and you're going to spend a first-round draft pick on a tackle, it better be one that can protect on the blind side.
Okay. My guess, and I'll have to think about it some more if it happens, is that Banner would be at left tackle and Jenkins at right, just because Banner is the veteran and has more experience. Is probably going to be just more comfortable just because he's been in the NFL, and so that transition's less of a burden to him because he doesn't have the burden of being a rookie and just getting a feel for the NFL. I know Jenkins has played left tackle, but he is more comfortable on the right side. So that's my guess of the situation is that Banner would become the left tackle and Jenkins on the right side.
That would be my guess if it played out that way. I would be quite. I think it's an upset if Teven Jenkins is the pick on many levels.
To some extent, for sure, especially the Tomlin Colbert not being there. That's the big one for me. But again, the mindset of we want to become a better run blocking team. We want to be more physical. Want to be more nasty. I mean, he checks all of those boxes. He's one of the nastiest dudes in this class.
All right. Had Alex Kozora released the same report that Pauline did, it wouldn't have probably taken you much to get to to sell the same report. What is the difference between? You see where I'm going here? And I don't want to – I enjoy reading Pauline's reports over the years as well too, but when do these guys ever get pushback for when they're wrong on them? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it really is kind of a Captain Obvious, in my opinion. Pick the three most likeliest names, knowing what the Steelers' needs are, yada, yada, and there you go. And people run with it all over the internet here, Couldn't you have released the same report and it got the same traction?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, Dickerson, you didn't know how they felt about Dickerson. I mean, we haven't talked about him a lot in terms of being in player 24. Maybe if he was there at 55 because the medical's been clouding this whole thing. But maybe that gives you some more indication on where the team is at when it comes to Landon Dickerson and specifically his medical history.
How much of this do you think, once again, I always wince this time of year when you see these kind of reports, not only concerning the Steelers, but across the NFL. Like, people think they've got this idea of which a lot of it, is common sense, right? How much of this is fabricated,
Well, I don't think.
Or common
I don't
sense.
think Pauline's fabricating it. But you're right. It is smokescreen season. I mean, just look at the 49ers and pick number 3. It's gone from Mac Jones to Trey Lance to Justin Fields, and that's been a merry-go-round about who the guy at number 3 is going to be every day. If it was like, oh no, it's going to be this guy. No, next day, it's this guy. So I understand that, but it's worth, I think, at least noting and talking about, even if it isn't the most surprising report in the world. But if it was a surprising name, if it was like they're going to take Caleb Farley, I mean, you'd probably question that as well, I suppose.
Yeah, especially because they weren't there at the pro day for starters, and because of the injury history, and Yeah,
but I'm just saying, like, if it was a non-obvious name, we would question that too, because it wouldn't make sense for whatever particular reasons for that player.
Yeah, look, I mean, the chances of it being one of those 3 is obviously higher than it not being one of those 3, I think. But what if it's not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at it this way too. Obviously throughout this pre-draft process and all these millions of mock drafts and all like that that come out, you have your major media guys mostly headlining that. I mean, across the board throughout this thing, the most prevalent, I think, Captain Obvious draw the line selection has been Najee Harris, has it not?
I would agree.
I mean, sure, people say, well, yeah, but so-and-so, went this way. But I think if you were to poll at this point 100 semi-knowledgeable to very knowledgeable Steelers fans and told them asked them who they would bet a large sum of money on being the pick, most of them would say Najee Harris, correct?
And I would as well.
Okay. When is the last time we've had kind of I don't want to say, maybe wire to wire is the wrong term, maybe it's the right term, but when is the last time we've had kind of a consensus wire to wire that's going to be the guy for the Steelers, and it ends up being the guy?
Yeah, trying to think.
Not that means much of nothing, because there's always a first time for everything there, but I don't know. I just
It's kind of it's too quiet. It's too obvious. Something's not right here if we can sense it. I had a good feeling about Bud Dupree way back when. TJ Watt to an extent.
Oh, but he's not going to fall. Oh,
yeah. Well, that was like with Dupree. I didn't think Dupree was going to fall, and that's not to get wrapped up in this, but Harris and Jenkins could easily be off the board before 24. I don't think Dickerson will be, but Harris and Jenkins, it wouldn't shock me at all if Miami takes Harris at 18 and Jenkins goes top 20. That's kind of partial expectations for both guys right now.
But you see where I'm coming from here? It just look, I mean, it's all speculation anyway. I just kind of question these quote unquote insiders being able to say they haven't narrowed down to 3 players,
Right. Well,
I think there's a little bit more depth to it than that overall. Now, you done wrapping up that stage of it here?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
All right. One of the things, if there was a drawback, if there was one single drawback to Najee Harris potentially being the Steelers selection, or maybe I guess more of an argument of why he wouldn't be, it would probably be his age, correct?
Yeah, I would say, aside from the positional value or lack thereof, his age in particular to him would be one big obstacle.
And don't get me started. Don't send me down the fungibility road, please. I beg you. But
I will say, to me, the age doesn't matter a whole lot. But if you're going to make a case against him, that's one piece you could use.
Right. And I finally got around to. I've been meaning to do this for a little while, but looking at kind of the historical aspect of the Steelers under Kevin Colbert and the age of the players when they're drafted, and really the running back position as a whole. Going back to the year 2000 as well, too. Now, was I surprised at what I found? No, but it's always much better to have the data in black and white, right? And that's what we have here. Assuming Najee Harris is the Steelers' first-round selection this year, he would become the oldest offensive player that Kevin Colbert has ever drafted since he's been in Pittsburgh, and the third oldest all time behind only Casey Hampton in 2001 and Jarvis Jones in 2013. So it's not like, at least it is split up there. I mean, it's not like you could just say, well, man, Kevin Colbert learned his lesson way back in 2001, right? Evidently he didn't, because Casey Hampton, there's no way you can take issue with that pick. Plus, didn't they trade down in that instance?
3 spots.
As well to draft him. Jarvis Jones, that's an argument we could have 3 shows about there probably in total there. But Najee would be the oldest offensive player Kevin Colbert has ever drafted at 8,452 days. The oldest offensive player coming into this that Kevin Colbert has ever drafted was Kendall Simmons at 30th overall in the 2002 draft. So quite a while since then, and after that, Plaxico Burress, you go all the way. Of course, back then you didn't have the underclassmen either. Kind of meddling this thing up here. The last time the Steelers drafted a running back in the first round was obviously in 2008, and that was Rashard Mendenhall. He was a mere 7,617 days old on draft day. He remains the third youngest Steelers draft pick that Kevin Colbert has ever had during his tenure as well too. So okay, they did draft a running back, something that they normally don't do, but yet you look at his age, you'd say, okay, well, I understand it. He was a youthful pup at the time there as well too. Now, when looking at the running back position as a whole, once again, this is only first-round draft picks, because I've already had people say, well, look at Nick Chubb. Well, Nick Chubb was a second-round draft pick, okay? When you look at the running back position as a whole dating back to 2000, assuming Najee is drafted by any team in the first round, which I think is obviously going to happen, he would become the 5th oldest running back on draft day dating back to 2000. The other 4 ahead of him, Larry Johnson, Grandmama. Do you remember? You don't remember those commercials? You ever see any of those old Larry Johnson commercials?
Vaguely, but I don't have a great recollection.
Roddy Brown, do you remember him back in 2005? Second round pick overall by out of Auburn there. Was the second oldest. Doug Martin, the muscle hamster, out of Boise State in 2012, and just go back just about 3 years ago, Sony Michel out of Georgia to the New England Patriots at 31st overall. Now, odds would tell you that Najee Harris is going to come off the board before 27th overall. So that would make him not only, he would be the second highest drafted oldest player at the running back position. I'm splitting hairs there.
You're splitting the atom over there.
Yeah. Boy, how amazing would that be fun to watch me try to do? But
I think it would end poorly for everyone involved.
Yeah. Something's gonna go wrong there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that. What I wanted to try, and I think I did, to point out is this would be not only quite a significant move by the Steelers, but I think NFL-wide that age doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter, but I think it was...
Is that a reference to something that I...
No, it just doesn't matter. It's from the old Meatballs movie, a movie that you haven't seen yet and probably never will. But
you made a Casey Kasem reference in the show last night. I think three of those guys. I think Scott got it. I don't think anyone else understood the Casey Kasem reference.
Yeah, for those just listening, Casey Kasem, boy, just growing up, there was a American Top 40 where they, basically you tune into the radio station on Really, it was a nationwide show, and I think it was on Sundays when it used to air. Casey Kasem used to count down the hits from 40 to number one, and you're talking about, 2.5, 3 hour show there, and yeah, he'd count down the Billboard hits from 40 to number one, and number one, and it was always kind of a big time to listen to the radio. I remember having a transistor AM radio out there in the front yard, and I think the radio station at the time, WBSR in Pensacola, Florida, AM radio. That was the radio station to listen to growing up. But you done sidetracked me there. Back to the original point here. What do you make of all this?
That's my question to you. I think it's really good information and good context, but how much is this going to apply to the Steelers? Because for me, and actually my very first terrible take was on this subject, to me, the age does not matter for Najee Harris, because let's assume he was 22. That doesn't make him a 10-year player for this team. Any running back you draft, you have to, I think, go in with the expectation of he's going to be a one and done guy, 4 years on the rookie deal, plus hopefully the 5th-year option, and then you put him on the pile and you start all over. And that's going to put him at 28 years old, and that's generally the time you probably want to start putting those running backs on the pile. So to me, the age doesn't matter so much, because it's not like this is a receiver or someone like that you hope and are drafting with the intent of playing 10 years from now and giving a second contract to.
This is more of a now, we got to have it now, right? I mean, right. Kind of pick there. Just from the sheer aspect of not going, you almost have to go into this with the understanding that, man, we even hope we can get this kid to the 5th-year option and it be relevant. The fact of the matter is, and we obviously don't know how the quarterback situation is going to play out, and if they'll be facing a franchise quarterback contract at the time any of this happens there and all. I mean, I think you have to go into this with the thought that this might be a 4 years and done on a first-round draft pick. And when is the last time really that we kind of envisioned the high probability that a Steelers first-round draft pick would no longer be with the team after 4 years?
The last time they drafted a running back in 2008. And that is an argument against taking a running back in general. That goes back to your fungibility argument, which I think is a very fair point. But to the age himself, it just wouldn't matter, because he was 22 and he was, an average age for the position and what the Steelers have drafted. We'd be having the same conversation. He's still probably a one and done kind of guy.
Right. And plus, I mean, knowing the need of this team and how they've not been able to run the football in the last several years would give more credence to why you would make the pick there as well too. But I mean, our job is to look at this kind of stuff from all different angles. And man, boy, the pushback I got yesterday, probably not surprising. Oh, well, Dave, obviously, it's Dave pushing the narrative of why they shouldn't. No, I'm just trying to look at this thing at all different angles, the historical aspect, and give reasons of why maybe he would not be the pick for the Steelers. I assure you this, the Steelers do not care at all of what my thoughts on who or why the direction the first round pick should go here. I'm just kind of pointing out kind of the significance of I mocked Najee to the Steelers in my first mock draft. It's going to be hard for me to pull him out of that number one slot, especially on the heels of this, Tony Pauline report, however much credence you want to give that thing on top of it there. But it would be quite significant if from several aspects, if Najee is the pick.
It would be, but I think if it was any other position, I think that study, that information would have more of a causation to it. But I think it isn't going to matter as much. If you like the guy, you like the guy. He's here to help you win now. He's here to help you win in the next 5 years. And I think that's the mindset you have to have when drafting any running back in the first round.
If he's on the board, he's the pick, right?
That's my belief, yes.
That's where
it's hard to say that always in a vacuum, because you never know exactly what else is going on, but he's the clear favorite, I think, right now.
I don't see how he's not. at this point. And really, I guess the Miami Dolphins are really the only team that could, or what most people think, could be the one to mess this thing up, right?
Right. Now, just to play devil's advocate, I mean, there was a report from I always get the name wrong, Lance Erline, not Larry. That was the O-line coach, Lance Erline, saying that the majority of people he's spoken with still rank Travis Etienne above Najee Harris. So you still theoretically have this debate between could it be Harris or could it be Etienne?
And then you have PFF that has Javonte Williams ranked number 1, which I wrote about this morning.
Right. So, I just want to be a little careful of not getting super, laser focused on Harris and forgetting about some other options, because I've gotten myself into trouble with that in the past, and you get surprised on draft day when you get hyper focused on just one name.
Right. I get that. They look like they did show. I mean, look, they were at the. To me, though, it does. No, let me put it to you this way: is Travis Etienne the fallback if they don't get Najee Harris? If Najee does not fall to them, what are the chances that the pick winds up being Travis Etienne?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's hard for me to put a percentage on that. I would say it's possible. I don't know if it's overwhelmingly likely, but it's hard for me to gauge that. I think Etienne, though, the issue with him is that I don't think he has the power and the short yardage ability that the team is looking for. When you see these names of Harris and Jenkins and Dickerson, they're all speaking to that physicality, that toughness, that demeanor, that ability to push forward and get that extra yard on 3rd and 1 or 4th and goal or something like that. And I don't think that's not quite Etienne's style, obviously. So I don't know if they would like that as much and to take him at 24 because he isn't fitting that mold and fixing that problem of not being physical enough up front.
Is there anything that leads you to believe that they would? I mean, to me, it has felt this way for a little while now. It really has felt like it's going to be Najee or Travis Etienne for a while now.
Yeah, but, could it be offensive line as well? There's Dickerson, there's Jenkins. I was a little surprised Pauline didn't mention Creed Humphrey, but obviously they weren't at his pro day, at least in terms of Tomlin or Colbert. But I think Creed Humphrey would be a great fit as well.
I would have, if I was going to manufacture a report, I would have put Creed Humphrey in there before I would Teven Jenkins, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, Pauline's been on this Jenkins bandwagon for Pittsburgh for a while now, too, so I know he's been on this for a while, but anyway, it may not be the question. What I'm getting at is that it may not be running back at 24 if Harris is gone.
Then who would it be?
Then it would be maybe a Dickerson or a Jenkins or a Samuel, and then things kind of get a little more open ended.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a good discussion though, and I think it was just a good report, and we'll see if it comes true or not. I mean,
is there any part of you that thinks that? Put the tinfoil hat on and said, this is just too clean. You know what I'm saying?
No, I like Pauline. I know this report is not earth-shattering, but I don't think he's making it up. Now, is he getting a bad source and smoke screens in the Pittsburgh? I mean, they leak as little as any team in football, so you never know exactly where this information is coming from. I promise you, Kevin Colbert is not telling Tony Pauline who's on their draft board, but, I mean, I think he's a credible guy.
Okay.
All right, Dave, let's stick with the draft here. And as you mentioned, it was kind of your Christmas yesterday with the draft roundtable and also Gil Brandt's updated top 100 rankings. I know those are always something that's pretty near and dear to your heart, and you like to look at that to judge your own evaluation and kind of where you agree and where you disagree. We talked about some of those guys on the draft roundtable yesterday, but we can kind of talk about some of those guys again or some new names on today's show.
Yeah, and first and foremost, I just like it from a perspective of the percentage of these picks that, first 32 picks, first 64 picks specifically, of how many, how far off Gil Brandt is. Now, I haven't had the as part of the post in the next couple of days, maybe even this afternoon, we'll look at what Gil Brandt, how close he was last year, how far off in a certain amount of rounds, in first, second, the same old stuff that I do every year. But say what you will about Gil Brandt, and I obviously do not agree with everything Gil Brandt puts out there. but the man's got a great track record when it comes to, top 32, top 64, and kind of his overall rankings. And we have seen in the past, though, that the Steelers really don't care much about what Gil Brandt puts in his rankings, right? Because we have had players show, some of the biggest discrepancies, I think, in the final rankings over the years when it comes to where Gil Brandt has these players in his top 100 versus where they actually go off the board. The biggest numbers off that Brandt has had over the years has come when it's come to Steelers players, right? Artie Burns, who else was there? Edmonds, I think, and wasn't he a little bit lower on Watt? I think I don't remember specifically. I have to go look at that overall. But anyway, some things that kind of stick out overall here, and we talked about a few of them there last night on the podcast. But Landon Dickerson up 14 spots. From up to 23, which obviously would put him right in the Steelers' wheelhouse here. Maybe Gil Brandt's heard some really good stuff about Landon Dickerson and the medicals there. Didn't they just have the recheck in Indianapolis there?
Sorry, NFL.com likes to autoplay every single time you click on an article. I was trying to pull up the top 100. Yeah, they just had the medical rechecks in Indy, and by all appearances, it seems like his rehab's going well. From the videos he's posted, the dude's doing cartwheels. Now, I think honestly with Dickerson, the medical, it's less about the short-term stuff because it sounds like his recovery now is going well, but the longer-term concerns, the risk of re-injury, the risk of scar tissue, the risk of are you going to hold up to be that 10-year guy? I'm obviously no doctor here. I think it's a good question for Dr. Mel, but I think the larger concern for Dickerson isn't the short-term, but just the long-term career outlook.
That would be a great, maybe I'll get a hold of Dr. Mel. She's been doing the terrible takes for us on Sundays here. Having her address the whole, what maybe the crew, the forward thinking might be from a medical perspective when it comes to Landon Dickerson because of the past issues that he's had. I'll probably reach out to her on that and see if that's something that she wants to tackle, because I would think that she would have a little bit more insight into that than obviously we would here. All right, Najee Harris, number 32 overall, down 6 spots in Gil Brandt's rankings there. That obviously notable when it comes to the Steelers. Travis Etienne down 8 spots to 36. I'm trying to see what else kind of sticks out here overall here. I think, and you and I and the gang talked about it last night. JOK, Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa, 51st overall, down 6 spots. That pretty much means that throughout this process here, at least in his 2 sets of rankings, that Gil Brandt does not have JOK going in the first round.
Yeah, that's interesting. And some of the names he's behind, 1 spot ahead of him is Nick Bolton. And I will take JOK over Nick Bolton every single day, behind Jalen Mayfield, who did not have a good pro day workout, obviously a different position there. I still view JOK as going to be a first-round pick here, but that might be one of those guys that you circle to really gauge how accurate Brandt's rankings was to see, and again, to compare where JOK goes versus his 51 ranking here.
All right, your turn to pick out some names on this list.
Yeah, I was just trying to go through some of them. Creed Humphrey at 48, which is actually up 10 spots. It's a little bit lower than where I thought he would be. Just trying to score that. Ronnie Perkins, you mentioned Ronnie Perkins, the edge. 56 overall in a pretty weak edge class, up 14 spots. I need to learn more about Ronnie Perkins and some of these edge guys in general. But that's one guy to maybe keep an eye on. Yeah, I would agree. And look, there's saying we talked about this last night as well too. There's some aspects of Perkins' pass rushing tape that go, oh my God, how is this guy not higher? Being talked about more. And then you look at some of the measurable aspects and the historical aspect of how some of these, I guess, undersized edge guys get pushed down, and then you maybe wonder, is it getting pushed down too much? So I kind of view him as a 3rd or 4th round guy, and I really think that he could end up being kind of a dark horse guy of maybe being the Steelers' edge that they take in this draft if it's going to be middle round. Yeah, another edge guy that I think is a sleeper that we should be talking about more is Peyton Turner from Houston. I mentioned him on the draft show yesterday. Really good size, length, understands leverage, good hand use, and a surprising amount of bend around the edge. He's versatile. He runs really hard at the football, and he's been productive and has a good personality. So I think he checks a lot of boxes the Steelers look for in terms of the type of linebacker they look for and the person they look for in drafting these guys as well.
Amari Rodgers at 63. What do you think about that? Seemed like his light has kind of dimmed a little bit as the pre-draft process has gone on.
Yeah, I think he's in the case of those guys you talk about early and then you just kind of stop talking about because you've already discussed them, 10 times in February. But 63 is a good ranking. That's pretty much unchanged from Brandt's last ranking. And I think he's going to be, probably a third-round guy and a really strong, fun slot receiver, plus a little bit of a gadget guy as well.
Another guy we talked about last night and wanted to kind of expand on with you a little bit, Asante Samuel Jr. at 66 overall. Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert went to the FSU Pro Day. There's a good shot of Mike Tomlin spending some quality time with Asante Samuel Jr. while they're in Tallahassee there. There's been a part of me, I've got to admit, over the course of the last, 72 hours or so before Gil Brandt released this, before the Tony Pauline report and all like that, there's been a part of me, Alex, that has been thinking, could Asante Samuel be the guy at 24 overall? Mm-hmm. And then dreams come crashing down. Not that these reports, the Steelers are going to go in the direction they want to go in. But is there any part of you whatsoever that thinks that Asante Samuel could be the guy at 24?
There's a small part of me, yes. If the board breaks in the sense that Harris is gone, let's say Jenkins is gone, and someone else is gone. I mean, I think Samuel was like 6th or 7th on my list of when I made that short list of Steelers possibilities a couple weeks ago. The question would just be where exactly is he going to play? The size is a little limiting. I think they want to keep Sutton on the outside. So would he move to the slot is going to be the question with Samuel Jr. And is that worth taking in the first round?
I think you can get him on the field right away as a slot guy.
Right.
I really do. And there is, look, like it or not, when you look at the cornerback depth chart for the Steelers right now, not only in 2021, but let's move forward to 2022. We look at this thing right now and look at the depth behind it and say, Justin Lane, you kind of grit your teeth there. And then you think, maybe they think more of Justin Pierre, James Pierre than what maybe the masses think. And then you think back, well, he is an undrafted free agent, but he's only played how many snaps did he play last year? Not many, quite a bit of a projection just off of game film alone, to have a lot of confidence that Pierre is going to be the next starter on the outside. Yeah, you re-sign Sutton, but what is he? We think he's an outside guy. They let loose a Steven Nelson there. I guess what I'm getting at there is you could go through, honest look at the depth chart and say, man, they really need to spend an early round draft pick on another cornerback this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We know that Sutton's going to play outside in base. The question is, in sub package, does he kick to the slot, or do they want to keep him on the outside? If they want to keep him on the outside, then I have no idea who your slot corner is.
And let's face it, Asante Samuel at this point, outside of Gil Brandt ranking him at 66, which I take that personally.
That's up though. He wasn't on the top 100 his last.
I know. I realize that. But why all of a sudden the rise? Would be another question with him. Where has he been? But
sure.
But all that beside, he checks a lot of boxes when it comes to him potentially being that guy, other than maybe him being 6 foot tall. You haven't done the cornerback list yet, have you?
No, I have not. I don't know if he'd make it. The size is probably going to hurt him, but I mean, if a slot guy is going to be a different conversation in terms of the size thresholds than an outside guy.
I mean, outside of that, with having Tomlin and Colbert at the pro day, the bloodline, You see where I'm going here? Could this be the guy that messes? Gil Brandt always has the Steelers screwing up his positional rankings. There's still part of me that thinks that Asante Samuel Jr. could be the guy.
Yeah, again, I think it's overwhelmingly likely they go offense to focus on all the things you mentioned earlier, being physical, tougher up front. But if the board broke, there's a certain way, and if they went defense, he would be high on that list of defensive possibilities.
All right, anybody else? Spencer Brown, 78. That kind of plays along with my wondering maybe if Brown could be the tackle for the Steelers in say round 3 or round 4.
Yeah, again, I don't think he gets out of round 3 just based on the size and the athleticism. I know there's a lot of projection there for a guy from Northern Iowa who didn't play in 2020, but he did at least go to the Senior Bowl. Samuel Cosmi really fell down hard. He was the 100 guy on this list. I think it's like 60 spots that he came down. There may be second, third round tackle there possibility.
Why do you suppose that? Down
60.
How does a guy move 65 spots? Once again, I love Gil Brandt's putting out this list, but there's not a lot of context involved,
right?
Especially with some of these guys. I reached out to them on Twitter, and I don't think I've gotten a response yet because of where JOK is. Just having him in the middle of the pack there at 50-something overall, you'd kind of like to wonder, because most of the major media guys have him kind of as a slam dunk guy. Why is he where he's at in this? And how does a guy like Samuel Cosmi drop 65 spots down to 100?
Yeah, and Cosmi had a good pro day. It's not like he tanked his pro day workout or something, and that's the reason why he's falling. So it's always a little unclear what the reasons are for some of these things. There's no explanation next to Cosmi's name here. But yeah, that was the biggest faller in this updated ranking.
All right, and Tommy Tremble, a guy that recently dove a little bit deeper down into right in the middle of the pack there, kind of that third round territory, if you will. I've talked a lot about Pat Freiermuth, and I think I feel a little vindication where Gil Brandt has him in his rankings. There at, what is it, 51? 50?
Yeah, somewhere in the 50s.
Right.
I dropped like 15 or so spots, but you don't consider, because that's putting him second round territory, and you said you still don't consider Freiermuth to be a second round value grade.
Well, I view him as definitely not top 50 for sure.
Okay, I mean Brandt's basically got him right on that cusp though.
Right. But I mean that's a lot lower than what a lot of people have had this kid throughout the process here.
Who do you think is going to be the second tight end drafted? I know I asked a couple of the guys this question last night. I don't think there was no clear answer.
No, I don't think, and I think people shoehorn Freiermuth up into that second round area just because maybe he is kind of the consensus tight end 2. But in my opinion, just because the guy is tight end number 2 in this class, there's a large gap between him and Pitts. I don't think you just throw him in the second round because he's a second-rated tight end. I think there's a large gap there in between, and I haven't, as disappointed as I was coming out of the full study on Freiermuth, it is hard to put somebody over him as tight end number 2, if that makes sense.
It does. I think it's either him or Tremble.
And now let's move into the Tremble part of this discussion of this podcast here. I finally got around to doing a deeper dive on him overall. I certainly get it with him. Now, there is a George Kittle aspect to him, which, I thoroughly enjoy. But
need a cold shower now, Dave.
Yeah, but I think here's the thing. He is an outstanding blocker. All right. For sure. And I got a good look at how they moved him around. They detached him. They attached him. They H-backed him. They full-backed him. They did it all with him. All right. And he handled all those roles extremely, extremely well. The difference between him and George Kittle, I think, is just the ferocity, the violence that was involved. I mean, I remember going back and watching some of that college tape of George Kittle and thinking, my God, that man has a family. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, and it wasn't just on one or two clips. I mean, George Kittle was constantly throwing people out of the club, and it was all over his tape. You don't see that to the same degree of, with Tommy Tremble, all right? Mm-hmm. But you do see some things where you think, man, there is a block where Tommy Tremble loses his footing. I know you've probably seen this one, that he loses his footing at the snap of the football. He still manages to out-leverage the guy. I think it's a linebacker on that play. The effort's there. The blocking ability is there. Bar none, he's at least from what I've seen, bar none, he's the best blocking tight end in this year's class. Would you agree? You probably would. Yeah,
he's right up there with him. And in terms of the earlier round guys, later rounds, you might do Luke Farrell or John Bates or something like that. But in terms of like potential late day two candidates, he's best blocker. Yeah.
All right. And then what I really wanted to dive into, because I had already had a sense that the blocking was going to be there with him. I wanted to see what this guy is, what he can give you in the passing game here. And one of the things that I think that's going to push him down, that I think obviously pushed George Kittle down, was how he was used in the passing game in college, right? I mean, because how can you come away from George Kittle's tape a few years ago and think, my God, how was Joshua Dobbs drafted? Not that sticks in my mind or anything.
Never.
But how did this guy go as late as he did? It had to be because the what he perceived to offer in the passing game, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm talking about George Kittle,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Now George Kittle exited college with more receptions than Tommy Tremble does. So what's that going to do to Tommy Tremble? Well, I think you got to go to the tape, right, and then chart this stuff. And I did. I charted all of his games from 2020. I don't have it on the site, but I did a lot of it of 2019 too, to get a full kind of contextualization on him. Look, there's not a lot of targets to choose from. There's not a lot of what do you have? 35, 36 receptions Tremble did during his career. So there's not a lot to go on. However, there is enough on there with the depth of target and the type of catches that Tremble made down the field. There's no hugely stuff like in Freiermuth's tape that's going to shift the depth of target because of blown coverages and all. And Jonathan and I talked about that on last night's podcast. I guess what I'm getting at here is that there is enough on tape, I feel, in the limited amount of targets / receptions that Tremble had, to think that this guy could be a viable option in the passing game, and maybe much more than Kittle had on his tape coming out of Missouri a few years ago there. So I think when you add all that together, when you look at the blocking aspect of Tommy Tremble, when you look at what is on tape as a pass catcher, it makes a lot of sense of why Tremble should be a legitimate option third or fourth round for the Steelers. If he's there with if the Steelers have not drafted a tight end come that first selection of the fourth round, I don't see how you don't run that card up at this point. Now you want to get into, there's not much difference between, where did the Steelers pick third round overall?
87.
And where did they pick fourth? The first to fourth?
I think it's 120, I want to say.
Okay, so there's a full round difference in there, right?
I can get the exact numbers if you want exact numbers. I think that's about. I know it's 87 in the third round.
Where is that fourth round pick?
I think it's 120, and then they pick like right after that, or shortly after that as well. Let me go ahead and check here. Yeah, it's 24, 55, 87, and then it is 128.
Man, that's a long time. That's a long time to wait, right?
It is.
And people say, then that's when it gets into, I think it's foolish to think, well, there's no way. It would be the counter argument to, there's no way that guy lasts that long. Okay. If the Steelers like Tommy Tremble, and it's hard to imagine them not, and if you want to improve this running game, man, you're probably going to have to take Tommy Tremble in the third round with that pick.
Mm-hmm. Let me give you a couple reasons why you should like Tremble more, and one reason why the Steelers may not draft him. And the reasons why I think you should like him more, and I'm saying this broadly, not to you specifically, is that the dude is still only 21 years old, so I think he's got his best football ahead of him. He just hasn't played a lot of football either. He was a defensive linebacker in high school till his junior year, and then he played a senior season, got hurt 2 games in, and then and going to Notre Dame. Obviously, he's only played 2 years there, so he just doesn't have a lot of football, being 21 and still pretty new to the position. So I think certainly he can grow and get better. Plus, and we know the Steelers love bloodlines. His dad was a star at Georgia. He played in the NFL, won a ring with the Cowboys, and that Super Bowl win over the Steelers as well. So there's a little football bloodlines as well. I think he's actually got a really athletic family. His sister runs track for Marshall, and I think he's got a brother that plays lacrosse, and so it's just a really good athletic family overall. In terms of the reason why I think he might not be the pick, I don't want to get hyper-focused on things, but this is a pretty big sticking point for Steelers when it comes to drafting tight ends is length. Tommy Tremble has 31 and 7/8 inch arms. And for Pittsburgh, basically every single tight end they've drafted have 33 and usually better 33 plus inch arms because they want guys that are long, and that generally helps you as a blocker. Tremble, obviously a very good blocker, but if you look at the history of the guys they've taken, usually they're bigger, they're heavier, and they're a lot longer than Tommy Tremble.
And what's the length difference there?
The requirement,
I sure hope the kid's able to feed himself.
He's 31 7/8, so I don't know. I think you got to make some T-Rex jokes for him. The requirement for Pittsburgh is at least 33 inches, and usually it's longer than that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, George Kittle had
33 and like 3/8 or something.
All right.
So there's something holding him back. I think it's going to be that lack of length. Now, again, he's still a good blocker despite the little T-Rexy arms. But for Pittsburgh, do they want someone that's a little bit longer? I mean, I go through the listing here. Zach Gentry, 33 and 7/8. Jesse James, 33. Rob Blanchflower, 33 3/4. David Paulson, the only exception, at 32 3/4. David Johnson, 33 3/4. And Matt Spaeth, we don't know his length, but I promise you it's longer than 33 inches for being 6'7". So there's a pretty clear history. Now, granted, they usually draft guys that are really tall, 6'6 plus. Generally, those guys are longer, but I'm just putting it out there.
You know the old parable, Alex, about there was a huge flood and the guy's on the roof of his house and praying that the Lord's going to send someone to and he turns. He says,
"I sent all those."
Right, I turned. He said, "No, the Lord. Here comes this first person on the boat and says, no, I'm good. The Lord's going to save me." And
the helicopter comes.
Right, the helicopter comes. He finally gets to heaven. He says, "Man, why didn't you save me?" He said, "Well, I sent you." Okay.
Might be blasphemous to apply this to Tommy Tremble.
Okay, well, I apologize. If you've listened to this podcast long enough, you have gotten past my truthfulness, I guess here. Alex, the Lord has tried to send the Steelers George Kittle. They tried to send him, who was the LSU tight end a couple years ago?
Foster Moreau.
Yeah, Foster Moreau. I mean, and here we are in 2021, and the Lord is trying to send the Steelers Tommy Tremble here. I mean, if you're going to let you can hire somebody to feed this kid, right? To spoon him his dinner and all. I'm not on the same degree as I was George Kittle here, and obviously it took me a little bit longer to get to Tommy Tremble's tape here. Pat Freiermuth, in my opinion, who would you rather have, Pat Freiermuth in the second or Tommy Tremble in the third?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, just who do you like overall? It sounds like you like Tremble more than you like Freiermuth.
I do. And look, I mean, I hope Pat Freiermuth has a long career in the NFL. I think there are some makings there to suggest that he might. Okay, but I mean, I'm the guy that's been screaming. You really have been too. That's screaming to get Jesse James back on this roster. Okay, to me. what is the difference between Pat Freiermuth and Jesse James? Honestly, I mean, sell me on why why Pat Freiermuth should be the pick in round 2 versus re-signing Jesse James for the NFL minimum or damn near. Now, look, I think Pat Freiermuth exits Penn State a better player than Jesse James was when he exited, but I don't think it's like a huge discrepancy from of the two, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I think Freiermuth's going to make more plays in the pass game than James did in college. And
why?
James
How?
In the NFL, I think he's just a better athlete to start, and maybe not. He's not Kyle Pitts, obviously, but he's a better athlete than Jesse James was coming out. James is pretty straight line-ish, and even in a line, he's not that fast.
But what do we don't even know what I mean. You see that athleticism on tape from Pat Freiermuth?
More so than Jesse, sure.
Okay.
I think I would still take.
And once again, it goes back to, look, I think Freiermuth is the better prospect.
Mm-hmm. Well, why do you think he's a better prospect
than Jesse James? Just because there's a little bit more athleticism to him.
All right, wasn't that what I just said?
Right, but you're I mean, we talking. I mean, I don't get the whole baby Gronk thing and all like that. You know, I mean, I
didn't call him baby.
No,
Gronk.
no, I'm not saying you did. I don't think he's second round athleticism tight end material, quite honest with you, and the blocking leaves a lot to be desired still. You know, as did with Jesse James coming out. You know,
right? Yeah, James was a pretty below average blocker. He was also a junior when he came out. He was 21. He was pretty young. I think Freiermuth can be a starter in this league. I think that probably puts him at tight end 2 status for me. Even with Tremble, although I like Tommy Tremble a lot, I don't know if I see like every down, number 1 tight end on your depth chart kind of guy, and that's what puts him behind Freiermuth for me.
Man, I mean, what's not letting you put Tommy Tremble on the field more?
It's a little bit of the lack of size, and just I feel like he's a guy that will do a lot of things well and wear a lot of hats for your offense in terms of that, H-back, fullback, tight end, kind of move around type of deal. But I don't know if I just don't know if I see that every down status from him, especially because we still don't know a ton about him as a receiver. I don't think he's a dynamic receiver. I think he's tough, he's strong, he's got good hands, but he's not super dynamic. Now, granted, Freiermuth isn't either, but I think the lack of size there with Tremble's going to cap some of that upside. I think he's a really good number 2 tight end type of guy and can have a really niche role on an offense, but I don't know if I see like every down, 800 snaps a season starting.
I think Tommy Tremble's a little bit more. I mean, look, neither one of them are very route nuanced, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's probably fair. Freiermuth, again, though, has more of a resume, at least as a receiver.
Okay. By total targets. But I mean, Tremble did more with his targets than Freiermuth. If you throw out that blown coverage against Nebraska,
what blown coverages of Tremble were there? I don't know.
They're
1 or 2.
I mean, not anything that sticks out where you're saying, boy, that really shifted the numbers kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. I guess I think the point is, though, it's not clear. Is it going to be tight end 2? Is it Tremble? Is it Freiermuth? Is it Brevin Jordan? Is it I know you're a big fan of Hunter Long. That's a guy worth talking about as well in this conversation.
Yeah, and I've still got to go deeper on him still, but his Hunter Long is more. I'll tell you this: Hunter Long is more Heath Miller than Pat Freiermuth is Heath Miller.
Yeah, I know you were discussing that. I think with Owen last night, and I understand that kind of. Thought process there.
I guess what I'm getting at here is, and look, we think the Steelers absolutely are enthralled with Pat Freiermuth. I mean, you look,
or at least Alfredo Roberts.
Yeah, you still can make several arguments to think that Pat Freiermuth would be the guy in the second round for the Steelers. I hope he's not, to be honest with you. Just like I hope they don't take a running back in the first round. But my hopes aside, I mean, the Steelers could very well come out of this thing with it being Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth 1-2.
That was your last mock, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance that could happen. What would I do? I would try to get Tremble in the third round, and I do think he's a guy that could play 700, 800 snaps for you. I do think he's a guy that you could move all over that formation, H-back, attached, detached, fullback, all of it there. I think you're better. I think the best value in this draft is Tommy Tremble in later in the third round.
So you're saying pick 87. That's where you would take Tommy Tremble.
I think so because of, and once again, I hate to get into all this, he's not going to be there in the fourth round.
Yeah, I would take Tremble at 87 too. I wouldn't have a big problem with that. I just wonder if that lack of length is going to be the one thing that really hurts him. Because if you're drafting him as a blocker and you're going to value length as well, is that going to play an impact in terms of their evaluation of him?
To me, if you draft Freiermuth in the second round, it's more about measurables.
Yeah, I think it's partially true.
Okay, but anyway, I get, people have been emailing us all along. What about Tommy Tremble? What about Tommy Tremble? I don't like to speak on guys until this long without taking deeper dives into their tape. I finally took a deeper dive into his tape. I get it with him. I'm not George Kittle level with him. Charlie Warner might have been a slightly better blocker, at least out in space than Tremble. I think Tremble has him inside the tackles more than Charlie. Receiver too, you could say. And right, and poor Charlie just never got thrown to, and Charlie also was unable to feed himself. Correct?
Was his length poor? I don't remember Warner's length. Yeah, the other thing too, I know some people will knock Tremble for this freshman tight end.
The Lord tried to stand the Steelers' Charlie Warner.
At some point, the Steelers, I think, have to die in this analogy. I don't know how many more things you can send to them to stay with the parable. And then look,
you're the one all along that's seemingly had the bigger heartburn about the Steelers in the tight end position than any of us. And you know how I like tight ends.
Sure, I'm fine with them taking Tremble in the third round. I mean, I'm all for them taking a tight end before the fifth round because they haven't done it since Matt Spaeth in 2007. The last point on Tremble is that I know a lot of pushback I've gotten with him. Was that he got beat out by this tight end? I think it's named Michael Meyer. No, that's someone else. Whoever got beat out in Notre Dame. That guy was a 4-star prospect, number 3 tight end in the country. Top 50 prospect in the nation. So I know that to lose out to a freshman tight end looks bad on paper, but that's top prospect. So I think that's context worth pointing out.
Yeah, and that would be some of the pushback in this. And I think some of what you hear is, how did Tremble get lost between Komet and this other kid?
Right. And
when the tape,
Michael Mayer.
Mayer, okay. And I would probably say that it's more from a receiving aspect than anything.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Maybe this other kid was, and I haven't watched, but I mean, obviously he shows up on some of the Tremble tape there from this past season there. But I guess that would be the argument is what's in there that held Tremble back between Komet and this other kid during these seasons here. I think he's going to be a steal. And if you get him in the fourth round, oh my God, what a steal. I still think the best value potential, especially at the tight end position specifically, is Tremble at that 80-something spot that the Steelers have in the third round.
The other concern though with Tremble,
Charlie Warner, 31 and 8/8 arms.
Real T-Rexy. The issue with Tremble is he going to be how much of an immediate impact can he make? Because A, we know the transition for any tight end is going to be tough. That's blanket. But then B, because he is only 21, because he has not been playing the position that much, and because he wasn't a super heavy snap count guy at Notre Dame. I mean, how much can you expect from him in year one? I think is a fair question.
However much you need him to be on the field to be part of a 2 tight end package, I think
that's a lot of snaps potentially.
I think he can get on the field, Alex. I really do. I think he can get on the field, and I think you can use him. Look, some of the things about tight end twos anyway is, can you use them in the passing game? Mm-hmm. I think you can.
I'm mixed on that because I think when you're a good blocker and you have that tenacity and effort and aggressiveness, that's going to help you kind of just overcome some of the lack of nuance as a rookie. But man, they're just 21. He's played football. He's played tight end for 3 years, basically. I mean, he's not played a lot of football in terms of playing tight end. And there's just a lot of small stuff that you're going to need to work on making that jump to the NFL. It just gives me some pause there.
All right.
All right, Dave. Good discussion there on Tremble. Any other prospects you want to talk about here? I think we covered at least some of the big names both here and on last night's draft show.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of it. I just wanted to make sure because I had Tremble being the last guy that I took a deep dive on. I wanted to make sure we got to him today, especially on the heels of me kind of talking down Freiermuth. Look, I don't hate Freiermuth. I never saw the whole push in the first round thing for him, and to be quite honest with you, I really do view him more as a third, fourth round value, to be quite honest with you. And I've watched a lot of film on him. He obviously has the better chance of being drafted in the second round. I think he's got a great chance of being a Steeler. I will love him just the same. But just from my aspect, as much as look, that's one of the positions that I really enjoy watching is edge, tight end, and pulling guards on the move and stuff like that. And I just have never seen it with Freiermuth throughout this process. And I do see it with Tremble around the third round there.
Is Tremble your second tight end 2 in this class in your personal opinion?
Man, it's hard. The only thing that's pushing him down is what we talked about, how he was used in the passing game to how Freiermuth was used. Is there enough tape in the 2 seasons of how Tremble was used to give you any kind of confidence that he would be an asset in the passing game? And that's really a delicate question. I think there is. I think there is. He showed he could catch the football down the field. Now, look, he did have 3 drops last season. All right. And they were pretty ugly drops overall. And for the amount of targets that he had, you'd say, oh boy, you extrapolate that out. I mean, that's Eric Ebron drop percentage there. So that is a little bit of a concern there. But the rest of it adds up, I think, with him.
All right, fair enough. I should mention in our What They Look For study, the only tight end to check every single box was Luke Farrell from Ohio State, a day 3 option for Pittsburgh.
And then obviously Freiermuth's not going to be in that because he didn't test.
Right. And Sean Bayer. Oh, go ahead.
What about the Bates kid?
He missed in a couple categories narrowly. I can pull up the list here. He missed in weight, in length, and I think that might have been the 2 that he missed in. Let me go ahead and look here really quickly. Yeah, actually missed not in weight. He missed in length and bench. I think he missed the bench by 1 rep.
All right, I would have guessed that he would have been more. He would have qualified more categories than
he was
did.
Close. The bench was, I think, 1 rep, and the length was, I think, half an inch was where he missed.
They've got to draft a tight end this year at some point. They got to, right? They have to.
I mean, I still think and hope they're going to sign some veteran guy. I don't know if you can just draft a rookie tight end in the 3rd, 4th round and assume he's going to be your second string tight end for the entire season, just given how tough of a transition it is for rookies to make that jump from college. So I think you need to at least have some sort of veteran presence as well, unless you're really, you just want to throw in vets like Gentry and Rader and let those guys all battle it out.
I mean, we're not going to see more of that silly putting Derek Watt on the end line of scrimmage and have him act like a tight end, right?
You're going to see Joe Haig line up for 200 snaps this season.
Oh, Christ.
One other tight end I should mention, Kenny Yeboah, I think, is a guy that checks a lot of the measurables they look for that, in theory can kind of be a seam guy as well.
Yeah, I don't want to see that, though. We already have one. His name is Eric Ebron.
That's a fair point. All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about, or we can wrap up today's show and get to some reader emails?
Yeah, you just getting me lathered up here.
I mean, if you have something else on your mind.
No, I think we covered the most of what we wanted to get today, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, let's get to some emails here. Daniel Sartich writes in double dip question. Hey guys, what do you think of the chances of the Steelers double dipping at running back this year? Oh God, I hope not, Daniel, because that means no. He says, I know they have more needs than picks, but hear me out. Rooney said they need to get a running game going, draft Najee Harris, and he gets hurt in camp. What is the plan B? Well, if you're at that aspect of it and you think that's a possibility, then don't draft Najee Harris in the first round. He says, humor me. Say they take Najee in round 1. Could they take Trey Sermon in round 3? Dan, I can't even humor you that way. It would be so irresponsible, I think, if they did that. It's already irresponsible enough. They have drafted one running back in each of the last 4 drafts, and none of them look like they can be, or look like they're going to remotely be the guy. So, Dan, I can't even humor you there. I think the chances of them taking 2 running backs this year is 0.0000%.
The only way I could see it happen is if it's kind of a technicality where the second running back they took was some sort of receiver type, like a Demetric Felton or maybe a Kylan Hill or someone like that's there for receiving purposes primarily. But yeah, I can't see them taking 2 bona fide running backs, especially in that Harris Sermon scenario that Dan's laying out there.
Let's just hope that the one that they do draft ends up being the guy that can turn around this, play a big part in turning this running game around and success rates and all like that. That's what I'm hoping for. Yep. Jeff Arbogast writes in, draft exercise. Hey guys, just want to thank you for the impeccable work that SD turns out on a daily basis. Best in the business. If Haskins and Rudolph were in this year's draft class, where would they rank? I would love to know how the Steelers would answer the same question. Jeff from West Virginia.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, there's hindsight there, obviously, now that you've seen these guys play compared to what they were, perceived to be coming out of college. So, I mean, if you compared them now, they'd be behind those top 5 guys for sure. How would they compare when they both were coming out? It's hard for me to answer that question.
Yeah, we have the after the fact bias now, and it's hard. You can't. Knowing what we know about these guys right now, I think both are still slam dunk 3rd rounders at worst.
Yeah, it's hard to even get in that mindset of trying to rank them like that. But they'd be behind the big 5 quarterbacks in this class, correct?
Well, yeah, because the unknown has more, and perceived upside also has more value than there's a degree of the bias and what you already know that you just cannot eliminate in this.
Yeah, I mean Haskins could be high. I think Rudolph would be in that Kyle Trask territory, so he'd be behind those guys the way that he was behind all those guys in 2018. Haskins could be in that debate between, I don't know, Matt Jones versus Dwayne Haskins, maybe something like that. Both kind of 1 year, not big resume dudes, different types of quarterbacks, but maybe Haskins be battling Jones for that 4th, 5th spot.
Yeah, it's one of those hypotheticals that it's just impossible to answer because of all several variables there. Brian Tolini writes in, hi Dave and Alex, Steelers Depot draft coverage equals A+. Thank you for that, Brian. Pick the running back center combination you guys feel is the best choice for us of these 4 choices. All right, here's an interesting question for you, Alex. A, Najee Harris plus Josh Myers is one choice. Javonte Williams plus Quinn Miners is your second choice. Travis Etienne plus Landon Dickerson is your third choice. Number 4, D, Trey Sermon plus Creed Humphrey. This is a great question, Brian.
It is. Wow. Initial thought, I'm debating between
I know
Harris,
which way you're going. Oh, no, okay.
Well, I'm debating between Harris and Myers versus Sermon and Humphrey.
Really?
Yeah, where did you think I was going to go?
I thought you were going to go Travis Etienne and Landon Dickerson.
I'm not crazy about Etienne.
Okay.
So where's your head at?
I got bias in here as well, too, that it's hard for me to eliminate. Man, I would go because I know where these guys are more than likely going to be drafted. I would go Sermon and Creed Humphrey.
Yeah,
I think you could possibly get Humphrey in round 2 and Trey Sermon in round 3. So that instantly opens up my first round draft pick for me. And I suppose you could probably say the same maybe with letter B with Javonte and Quinn Miners, right? Although I guess a good argument could be say you have to get both those guys in the second round, yada yada. I think Trey Sermon is undervalued in this draft, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I'll go with Harris and Myers.
And where do you perceive Myers? 3rd round, 4th round?
2nd or 3rd.
Really, Josh Myers, you think?
Probably more likely 3rd, but okay. Yeah.
Where do you go? Where do you have the ability to go wrong the most of those four choices? What would you cringe the most at, grit your teeth at, coming out of one of those four selections?
I mean, none of those were bad options. The one I guess I would rank the lowest would be Williams and Miners, because I feel like you're not getting the top guy at either spot in that scenario. But then with Etienne and Dickerson might pose the most amount of risk because Dickerson is medical. Plus, I'm not a big fan of Etienne, so I could see that one go belly up in terms of like the biggest bust factor.
All right, that's a great. Thanks for playing. He says, yeah, that was fun. Alex, which of the top three running backs most likely to be on the outside looking in after the first two seasons in the NFL?
Wait, repeat that one more time. Which of the top three is going to not?
People, maybe even be on a different team, but people saying, oh man, that's one of those running backs that just didn't work out. After 3 seasons, let's go after 3 seasons. Najee, Travis, Etienne, or Javonte Williams?
For me, it's Etienne. I think he is overrated to some extent. He's my number 3. He's behind both Harris and Williams to me.
Wow.
So I'm not a big fan of Etienne. And I know that some people say that Williams is too small, but I mean he's the same size as Travis Etienne. It's like half an inch and like 3 pounds, and he's got bigger hands. So I think the size isn't an issue.
I really enjoyed breaking down the tape of really all 4 of them. Harris, Javonte. I haven't gone deep into Trey Sermon, but enough to know that I think he's a little bit underrated in his class. I mean, this is probably one of the better running back classes I think we've seen in a long time.
You think? I think it's good at the top. I think the depth here isn't as strong as it has been in other classes.
I'm talking about just the top 4 overall.
Oh, the top.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's strength at the top for sure.
All right. Let's see if we can fit in maybe one more question here from... How about Josh Moyer? Any chance Vince Williams gives you reps as a number 3 inside linebacker and 3 or 4 outside linebacker in certain situations? Maybe you see some more 43 alignments, especially if JOK is the pick. Bush at middle linebacker, Vince at strong side linebacker, JOK at weak side linebacker, playing behind Watt as a stand-up end. So in other words, some of that stack stuff, I guess is what he's kind of looking for. In other words, Vince give you reps as a number 3 inside linebacker and 3 or in a 3 or 4 outside linebacker in certain situations.
We've reached the 4-3 defense portion of the Steelers offseason. Mark that on your calendar. I don't know. It's a lot of variables there. Vince is not really an outside linebacker. He's a pretty poor pass rusher on the edge. You want him rushing up the B gap, not against offensive tackles. So I really can't see that playing out.
Yeah, I think he's viewing him more in the outside linebacker realm as 4-3, as a strong side.
Yeah, still.
It's hard to vision it.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of variables there in terms of who they'd have to draft and for all that to work.
Give me a % chance Vince is not on this 53-man roster this year, Alex.
I think it's pretty low. I mean, I think he's coming back. I'm sure the Steelers told him what their plan was and vision. I'll put it at 15% chance he doesn't make it.
I'll put it much higher than that. I'll put it around 29%. I'm taking the over there.
Very specific over.
Yeah, I think it's more than people think. And I know people I know these last couple podcasts, people are probably grasping their pearls and God bless Vince. If Vince makes this 53-man roster, people are going to try to find a way to say, but you said this. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm saying. My wife says that's my new favorite saying is I'm not saying. I'm just saying. I don't think people are given enough thought to the aspect or plausibility of the fact that just because Vince is back, I don't think it means he's a lock to make the 53. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why wouldn't he start over Spillane since he started over Spillane last season. I mean, I guess you could argue, there's Spillane's growth and improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it, And I mean, I think there's still a chance that this team drafts an inside linebacker type. I really do, and sooner rather than later. Still, look, outside linebacker I think went up when they re-signed Vince, and we talked about this. It lessened the need at the position some. More than anything, I think it tells you that okay, there's a very good chance that it's not going to be the pick at 24. However, I think you get into that third, fourth round there. I think there's a chance that that the Steelers draft an inside linebacker. And if they do draft any inside linebacker during this draft, what does that do to Vince's chances of making this roster?
Yeah. But do you pose that question more to a UG3 type of guy? Is he going to make the roster?
Well, look, he's already he's
right.
already not.
That could be the nail in the...
Right. I mean, his circumstances already he's on thin ice as it is,
Right, but they're going to keep, at least 4 inside linebackers.
At least 4, maybe 5.
Maybe 5, yeah. So you just have to play that scenario out.
Right. Once again, I just mark this down. I'm just saying that I think the plausibility of Vince not making this 53-man roster is higher than what most people think it is with him back.
Understood.
All right, I think we got to a lot of what we needed to get there. Man, people, if you have not listened to the Monday Night Podcast Roundtable, please do, and we really would like to hear some feedback on that if possible. If you don't do anything this week but listen to that 2-hour podcast and send an email to theterriblepodcast@gmail.com, good, bad, indifferent. Boy, the podcast would have been even better had Dave not been involved in it. If that's the level of the feedback that we need to get to this, so be it. But really would like to hear the feedback, good or bad, when it comes to that 2-hour podcast. Because as I told Alex, there was some surreal moments during that thing that I was a proud papa during that thing there, all the way around. And once again, shout out to the guys for participating in that. We hope to have some or most or all of these guys back post draft, I think, Alex, right, to talk about these prospects.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, what do you have going on here? Where's my calendar at here? Tell the people what to look for. Are you going to do another one of these walk the mocks or what?
If they're doing it, I talked to the guys. If they're going to hold something, they said that they might try to make it happen. Other than that, we'll also have mock drafts from all these guys, and Dave and I included as well. But we'll have a mock draft from each person. That'll probably start going up pretty soon. I'm going to try to spread things out here a little bit. So look forward to the mocks from all the Depot crew and getting our final draft profiles in as well. Got a report today from myself up on Tay Gowan, I think a sleeper corner out of Central Florida.
Are we going to? Is this the Monday that we do a live stream, or was that last Monday?
This upcoming Monday will be the live stream, yes.
Okay, so and you and I will be back again at it on Friday, correct?
Correct.
All right, in the meantime, you can follow me on the Twitter machine at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show. Please email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com, with any criticism, feedback, hate mail, whatever. Get it on over to theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. For $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of the site. Thanks for tuning in again on this Tuesday. And once again, Alex and I will be back on Friday with the show. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.